Hello.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Good.
I hear you.
Are
Yes.
we in?
We're
Are we
in.
in the next world? All right, great.
Hmm.
Well, we are still in, well, welcome to the Great Transition. Hello,
But Seth,
Asaf.
give me a little
Hello,
more
Chris.
volume on your end, dude.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, yeah.
That's better?
Hmm.
All right, good. Asaf, you good? We hear everything?
I think so. 1 2 1 2. Welcome to the
One,
great
two.
transition.
Welcome to
Hello.
the Great Transition. I got a call today from a guy you guys would remember back from the Brand New World days. It wasn't Mike, it was remember
Oh,
Dave? Remember
yeah,
Dave?
sure.
No,
Great
remember,
singer.
but
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, like, oh, I was watching the show the other day. I guess things have changed over at Kabbalah land. I
Watching what
thought
show? This
Kabbalah
show?
was like more, what? He was watching the
What?
show.
Oh,
He said, I thought things were more like Kumbaya style. I heard you guys kind of disagreeing about some things. And it's interesting also
made
in our
it deep into the
dissemination.
woods.
He
Huh?
should listen to the last 2 weeks of lessons from our teacher,
I think he is actually also because he
uh
said something about,
talking about dispute being the basis of all spiritual growth.
A closet
Just
listener.
that.
There's a lot of
you
those.
know. So
yeah,
yeah.
really fascinating to discover what's going on in the wisdom of Kabbalah. What a unique method it is. When Corona came out, and our teacher Rob Lightman was already, towards maybe a year ago already, and he's talking about like problems with food that'll be in the future.
Yeah.
And like, what is he talking about? Why? How does he know? Where's the evidence? And you kind of go back to like remembering the structure, inanimate, vegetative, animal, people, and of course everything is contained within everything else. But it was like going from some um, virus, and then the next would
Hmm.
be like vegetative, and we see now that I just started seeing stories that between Russia and Ukraine, they're responsible for what percent of the world's grain, food.
Yeah,
Russia's
Oh,
a huge,
right.
like
yeah,
40% or
massive.
something together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 40% of the world's wheat, and Russia is also,
40% of the
yeah, I think
world's wheat
so.
is
Combined, both those
coming
countries combined. Yeah.
Yeah.
coming from both Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
And neon.
Makes sense.
Ukraine is neon gas, which is for semiconductor or for silicon chips. So
Hmm.
it's a
Yeah,
blow.
there's so many things that are, and so Russia also is a big producer of chemicals for fertilizers. Without those fertilizers, probably we'd all be healthier. But also without those fertilizers, the bugs will eat the plants, and which will
Right.
also make the yield less. So there's so many compounding things from all this. It's just fascinating to think that when we're listening to the morning lesson from the Kabbalist, and he's just explaining the world, not making predictions, but just talking about the unfolding of things, and then to see it happening, it's really fascinating, and also to be learning simultaneously like structural things. So it's not like some kind of
Hmm.
mystical thing, but you're learning the structure. So just such a unique
Yeah.
time.
Very special
So
times. Yeah.
yeah, really special time. So
We were saying special. It's maybe just to linger on it for a second. For for people who don't uh, have this Kabbalistic insights on reality, I don't know if they would say special.
Right. They would not use the word
I don't
special.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
for us, it's special
It's an
because,
it's an
well,
authentic special. It really
let's
does
come up
feel
with a better
authentically
word.
special.
well,
Doesn't have to be good. It's just
I would say it's revealing. It's a revealing time. It's a
nice word.
When
very
the internet, when
telling
Corona,
time.
Corona is a super unique period in history.
Yeah, yeah,
There was so
absolutely.
much transformation. I think outside of Kabbalah, you just can scroll on YouTube. I guess they know what I'm interested. I'm interested in meaning of life. There's so
Mhm.
many people, from conspiracy theories to the yoga world to positive think world. There's so many people that feel that it's a time of transformation.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
I mean, the wisdom of Kabbalah offers a super unique method, but as far as understanding that it's a time of transformation, I think there's a lot of communities, more than probably most people realize because it's nowhere in the mainstream media. But there's a lot of people who are awakening and feel that it's a time of transformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah.
in the wisdom of Kabbalah, for us, it's kind of strange because once you get on the path and start moving and start actually doing the work, it starts, you get to like at the beginning, all of a sudden you found books that have all, contain all of the secrets in the universe. And it's like very exciting. And you start to find answers and it's very exciting. And then you start going through a process of inner transformation and you
Hmm.
start to feel like you're not making any progress. You're like
Sure.
start to feel like everything is very kind of normal. I don't feel
Hmm.
What
the
happened to
pot
the
the
feelings?
what happened to all of those candies and all of those
Yeah.
surprises I was going to get. And what happens is we're accustoming ourselves to actually lift off of the earth, to like release ourselves from the grip of the gravity of the earth. If you imagine that all of our desires that are connected to our body, food, sex, family, money, honor, and all the things from this earth, it's like a gravity that pulls us down. And then the spiritual um,
Do you have
Yeah,
another word
yeah.
for
perception
spiritual?
I,
is
I I I like the plane metaphor. I feel it like for me, it's like when you start studying Kabbalah, and start could be, I don't want to go into time, duration. It's also varies between people, but let's say like in those like initial kind of inner moves that practicing this wisdom does in you, you feel like you're taking off earth. You literally get to suddenly breathe a different kind of air. I don't even know if I
Yeah.
have the
Can you
words.
even
You guys,
explain that? What happens? I don't know if you can
can we even
explain it.
explain? I don't know. I don't
no,
know.
it's not
Because
Tell me
worth
if you
it. Just
can.
talk about your experience and let's
okay,
keep moving with it.
so what I just wanted to say is like at first you get that feeling, but then just like with a plane that flies, when you're already in the air, you're moving a lot faster, but uh
There's
you're
no street
less
signs and
there's
trees around
yeah,
you. There's nothing to
exactly.
tell where you're moving.
Exactly. You have
Yeah.
much less like friction with the things that you had friction before. So you're going through very subtle, nuanced, spiritual discernments and developments inside of you, but you have to be more attentive to them
Yeah, you're
because
noticing them from the side. You're not like they're not just happening. They're like happening, but you're always just on the side, kind of like watching them.
exactly, and you can kind of choose how conscious you want to observe your
Yeah.
progress. How it becomes completely you're in the plane, you're moving forward, but it becomes very, very your experience is completely dependent on how attentive, how conscious, how much you work on it, how much you train that muscle. That anyway, yeah,
So
you
more
get
the
what I'm
more a
saying.
Yeah.
person develops spiritually and even as a person, further away from being a vegetable, further away from being a monkey, even,
Hmm.
the more he's pulled into earth, the more has this quality that makes him heavier, spiritual, just heavier.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where we're at now with humanity. There's this very heavy force pulling us into our desires.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Okay.
Okay.
So, what we do when we come to the wisdom of the method, we get on that path and we start going. And all of a sudden, I realize what I'm studying here. And I realize I want to be like the life force of reality. I need to be just
Hmm.
giving in everything. So whereas earth and all of the desires here are pulling me down, I want to actually make it so that I'm giving with all of my heart and giving with all of my energy and with not just my limited faculties but the force that is lighting billions and billions of stars. Like I want to be part of that dance, that song. So
Yeah. Yeah.
when we do that, when we start to work on that, it's called extending the light of chasadim. It means like we're accustoming ourselves to be like love, which is all, like to lift off the earth, which is pulling us down, and the efforts that we're making towards that, it's called extending that light of chasadim, that light of that's what it's called anyway um, in this study in Hebrew. And then the life force that lights all the stars, that
Mm-hmm.
lights everything. I mean, it's spiritual, and the stars are still even physical. Then starts to flow through that pipeline, and fills. It pours through all these channels, through all the sphirot, and it fills the world. And now, today, all of the nations all around the world, all these broken pieces after this light is coming into the world, because we're chains in other generations who have already been passing this down and doing this and bringing uh, this light into the world more. As that force comes in more, as more and more people start focusing on this love of others and starts focusing on towards connection with others, and more of this light enters in, a new force stirs in, a new force kind of awakens below, it's called, in the earth. The
How will
that
that
for
will that uh, tie into the war that's happening right now?
the
Because that
force
you almost you almost took us to another planet, but then it's like you open the news and there you're still on this planet with the war.
Okay, so
So,
that life
mhm,
force that comes in,
mhm,
what's unique is that in our life, we have to do everything, right? We have to, just to even do this show, I need to like have a mic, I need to have headphones. You guys need to do whatever you're doing with YouTube and live stream and all these like things that you have to do on Earth.
mhm,
But once you arrange the pipe, the light that actually fills it, that's not us.
mhm,
That's the life of nature. That's the life of lives. That's the life that, we can be great, but, Da Vinci, Galileo, like just Da Vinci, or someone who's like an artist or a craftsperson can be great, but all they're doing is like the to make life, to make a plant, to make a flower. Like, what is an artist doing? An artist is painting a flower or a person or something that life made. The artist is just like replicating life. The force of life, the force of love that comes through this pipeline, is actually doing all the work. And that's what I wanted to bring up about this war, about
okay.
what we see happening, is that we have the, Zelensky or Putin this, or this, but we also want to see the awakening, the change that's going on through humanity, and not just from the, set up the YouTube channel, do the live stream, get the microphone, get guns, do the tank, throw the Molotov cocktail at him, invade from the east. Like, in addition to all of these moves that are happening here, we also have to remember and be mindful of and participate in the other thing, because, right, like we said, like I said all the way at the beginning, when you're doing the spiritual work and you want to leave just living like a beast in this world, an animal in this world, a person in this world who's just going through the guns and the internet and everything, but wants to rise to be like the force of life, you don't see your results everywhere around you. In fact, what you see could be totally confusing. You could think that you're headed towards the end, but you could be in a transformation and not
Mhm.
seeing it. So, as usual, what we're going to do today is talk about things that are going on in the world, but at the same time, there's another world that we don't see with our eyes. There's a very, very famous Kabbalistic expression: they have eyes and they do not see. So, let's look at what's happening. Let's learn from what's happening. And also, let's see the bigger inner picture and the inner movement that's going on in humanity, and how to simultaneously see. Oh, there's such good stuff on the present and the future.
Mm.
I don't have the mind to open it now, but
You mean
there's,
quotes? You mean source materials?
yes, Bala Salam writes a lot. Rabash writes a lot about, in spirituality, you have two, well, you have everything in one. There is no time.
Right.
So, but for us, our full transformation, our full awakening, our full spiritual um, life exists. We don't it exists in a place called future. We don't see it in the present, but in that spiritual reality, it's there. So as we're going through this week 5 of this war, which didn't just happen one morning because Vladimir forgot to take his crazy pill, like these are things that are years and years in the making. And then depending on how we um, are advancing spiritually, as the collective humanity is advancing, these things either manifest in a more material way, or we advance more through a spiritual way where the wars are fought uh, between our qualities,
Yeah.
and not with guns and tanks and uh, yeah,
Yeah.
bombs.
Well, everyone's going. It seems like, the one thing that is very, very obvious with this war, unlike probably any other big war before, probably because I mean the biggest uh, act of war in the most recent and big act of war we can say is probably World War II. And in World War II, the world was a very different place, technologically speaking, communication, information wise. The world was very different. And so it took, even just technically, I think it took weeks just to understand in certain parts of the world that a war is taking place. Today, like everyone knows
It's like a Twitter
everything
war. It's like a war on Twitter
immediately. Exactly.
almost.
But what does that do to us? It's not just that we know about it, everyone is involved, everyone is conscious, everyone is being pushed and forced and to take a side, to take a stand,
It's been
to
the
be in.
biggest emotional, like,
Yeah,
what how do you even describe? I don't even. Is there a word to describe what happened? It's like you
yeah,
all of a sudden anyone across the world you can identify with, how they feel about. It's like you have this
exactly.
connection with everyone or something. It's right. There's something weird.
It is a very, if you stand out and kind of zoom out and think about it, this is unprecedented. the
Yeah,
the
no, no.
kind of emotional
Now
involvement that
the
every person on the planet has with this war is very different from how things happened before, how wars happened before.
we had
it
like Tiananmen Square. There was that like man standing in front of the tank. Remember that image?
Mhm.
We had like
Oh yeah,
iconic images, and like that one snapshot was like the whole movie of
contained the everything.
Right.
Yeah,
war. Yeah, like
And
you have
today
that
you're
one.
getting like Twitter videos
Yeah,
of like,
right.
everything
So
that's
like,
happening on the ground. You get a
and
drone
Telegram
shot of all of this.
groups, everything is live
It's
updates like within a few minutes. Yeah.
but here's the thing, like why am I interested in that? Like
Why are you
what
interested in that?
got me here? What got me here is not, it's not just that we know more. We are like unwillingly even more involved. Like it or not, want it or not, you
Mm.
have to be involved. If you're a player of some, like a big player in whatever, in commerce and business, you have to take a stand. You have to, there's all
Right.
these
Yeah, you have
there's
examples of companies. Every
there's
time,
all
like,
these.
there's a new update. Like, this company has now decided to stop business in Russia.
Yeah, so, and not just if basically it touches everyone. You have to relate to it.
You have
That's
to
what
relate
what
to
I
it.
wanted to
That's how
say.
you
You
that. Yeah,
have
yeah.
to
Mhm.
relate to it. With If you're a political leader, of course, doesn't matter in what country, you have to relate to it. If you're making policies, you're one of the decision makers, shakers and movers of some country, you have to relate
But
to
that's
it.
not
If
new. We
you're a
we just recently talked about something like
but
you have to relate to this. What was it? Oh, we talked about transgender. So it's not like a new. It's not some new thing. Like like the world is forcing everyone to relate to it. It's on a different substance.
look,
Like
I'm
good or
what I'm saying
bad.
is,
Are you good or bad? That's kind of how it feels like they're asking, I think.
I'm like I'm working on producing media, the creative things. I'm using all kinds of tools for and websites for video, audio, graphic design, things like that. Every single one of them makes sure that I know that they are now
Oh,
donating my
yeah.
money to
We
Ukraine
support
refugees
Ukraine.
or something
Yeah.
like
Oh
that.
yeah, when I
Somehow.
Like
signed into Google this
it's
morning, it said, click here to send money
ex-
to Ukraine.
Right.
exactly. Now, what is this? This is just surface level things, right? But so, what is this? What is this phenomenon? And they have to, because they know that if they don't, a lot of companies are stopping. Netflix has stopped their business in Russia,
Oh,
right? All the sanctions.
I
That's
wish
a
we were
big blow.
so much smarter. Everything turns into like a Disney movie. Like Zelensky is the hero, Putin is the villain, and it becomes like very
Binary Hollywood,
very very
the
binary in
villain and the
Hollywood. Yeah.
hero, the criminal and the
I mean, no
good guy,
doubt
bad guy.
about it. It
Yeah.
is horrible. That like the bombing. I mean, this is horrible, horrible
It's
things.
surreal.
But
It's surreal that it's
it's
happening. Yeah,
it's
still.
so surreal. But our understanding is what I'm talking about. The way we digest these things is still so childish. We just
Very, very
immediately say
superficial.
goodbye, bad, good guy,
Yeah.
bad guy, and I think it has something to do with our needing to make meaning out of everything, and also know, you know,
Also has to do with just mass communication and mainstream media and interests. Of course, there's interest behind everything, But I think uh, what's more interesting here is that on a deeper level, stuff is happening in the human network. And that's what we're totally ignorant of, unless, uh, I'm saying if we are like
Unless
the
you fly
average
below the
person.
clouds. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is like tectonic changes are happening in the human network. And we're seeing, as big as what we're seeing is on the surface,
Define a
it's
human
bigger.
change.
It's bigger behind
What
it,
is a
beneath
human
it.
change? And the human
Yeah,
network,
that's it.
like there's a change. What is it? What would I say is a change?
Mm,
How would I recognize that?
I would say the war outside that we see with bombs and Russia and Ukraine and soldiers and people dying, and we have friends, in both of these countries that we speak to every day or see them every day, in a and we see what's going on. That is one picture, but the war outside is happening inside of us first. The the network of humanity is a network of desires. And if there's a war on the outside, it means that desires in the human network are in some sort of a friction, some sort of a conflict. So there's a war happening in our inner world, and it produces an external picture. We play out our internality, our internal structure. We play it out in the form of an
So
external
what's the change?
war.
What you're saying that there's change in the network.
So
So what is it?
the
If the human
desires
network is
in the
being changed, I would say
yeah,
humans are going to war. Okay, yeah, that's different than it was a month ago. But
yeah,
what's the network? What's the change in the network
the
besides the fact
desires in
that
the
it's
so if all of humanity is a network of desires, right? We're not even bodies, we're not even living on a planet, in a world, a material world. We are a network of desires, these non-material entities. Kabbalists call them vessels. What is happening there is what where we want to explore, you're saying, right? So what's happening is our desires are constantly sorting themselves out, figuring out different configurations of connection, because there's a program that pushes them to keep clarifying, keep sorting out, keep scrutinizing. How can they connect and mesh in a new way
so
so
okay. This
that
is what
they
I wanted
work
to ask.
together as one? That's
Okay,
what's happening beneath the surface. They
because
okay.
have to,
at the end
yeah.
of the day, all of those desires need to connect into such a way that they can hold the endless light.
Yes,
And
they can have. They have. Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
process of them coming together is the whole process of the development of the
All of human
of
society,
Earth, well,
everything,
even before human
or even
society,
before.
of
Yes.
Earth, and even before Earth. Earth was only five
Yeah.
million billion years ago or something. So after Earth, and then after vegetation, and then after the animals, there's one direction. But the amazing thing, and this is in Peace in the World, I think, by Bala Sulam, is he says, if you had to live at the time when the Earth was a fireball, and then an ice ball, and then a fireball,
Hmm.
it would be terrible. It'd be much better to wait a couple billion years till all of those forces calmed down and came into balance, and a crust formed, and oceans and nice birds and flowers. Then it would be a good time to be there. That same war is taking place inside of us now. And he says, we have a heart and a mind now. We don't have to, we can wait for more wars and a third world war and a fourth world war to all, because one way or another, the freezing and the cooling and the fire and the cooling and the fire, those forces have to, that's how, between those two forces is how you create light, is how you create energy. Even spiritual light, it comes from that. Even material light comes from that same spiritual structure. So those big forces, and that's the wisdom of Kabbalah, is to learn the way that we do that, uh, without bringing them together. So, like you're saying, all of these pieces are coming together, or need to figure out how to come together. And if we're doing it consciously with our heart and our mind, then it's something. Oh, Saf, you're disappearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Am
something.
I here? Am I
You're
back?
here. Yeah,
Sorry.
it's something comfortable. It's something conscious. It's something pleasurable, because it's it's like it's a spiritual union between two forces. If we're not doing, and that's the whole thing that we're trying to do, and imagine a world where everyone is caring for each. Oh, Asaf, you're disappearing again.
Got
Something's
connection
going on
issues.
with my camera. I think you can
Mm,
still hear me. I'll try to fix it, but
Okay,
I
so
can hear you and you can
can you
hear me.
participate still?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm totally here. I
at
see
least
that
it's a
something's
good. It's
wrong
frozen
with the
on
camera.
a decent image. You look decent.
Yeah, yeah, you could have had your mouth
Could
open.
have been worse.
So alternatively, and if we can remove the moral kind of labels about good and bad, and imagine that this progress is happening, and if we participate, it is a smooth process. And if we, oh, there we go, you're back. And if we, and now you're frozen again. And if we don't, then we have these kind of wars.
I want to go to the network thing again. It's like it's just a new concept, and it's hard. It's like you're constantly fumbling with the network. Okay, on one hand you have war that's happening over there. I feel something from the war. I feel some kind of influence from it, and then on the other hand, as a result of the war, meaning it's not something separate from the war. There's also this action that's happening in the world, and I'm somehow caught up in it. Just one little ripple that happens in a geographical location around the world. Everyone feels it. Everything is happening there. Okay, it's not one little ripple, but there's what I was trying to get us off to
It's
get to
not
was
even
that
a.
there's
I would say it's not even a ripple. It's a shot. There is no. There's nothing local anymore. That's what
right.
I would say. So take all this process that Seth was talking about. So desire is the stuff of creation. It's the stuff of reality. It's the substance that creation is made of. And as it started as just still level of desires, which produces to our eyes matter, right? And then it evolves to vegetative, animate, human, all that process Seth was talking about. And now we're at a point where all of that desire became those pieces of desire, because the desire was also shattered into many pieces, but all of those pieces have already like interlocked into a single network, and now they're developing as a single network. The Russia-Ukraine war, therefore, is a non-local phenomenon. so to speak, meaning it's not happening in a place, it's happening across the network, but we identify the surface level result of it
Yeah,
in a certain place.
that's good.
Mm.
To begin
That's what I
with,
wanted to hear.
because
Yeah,
nothing exists in isolation. All of nature is one thing, and all of humanity is one network. There is no this thing and that thing. They're all
And,
one in our
and the more you're
minds
engaged in
that we
this,
dissect them. Yeah,
the more you're engaged in spirituality, the more that you feel it as not a war happening somewhere else,
yes.
but you feel all of those movements in yourself, and
Let's
you
talk about it. If you
spot
brought it up, I wasn't sure if we could. Let's just talk about it. I think our
the
the
fear.
people who are
The,
yeah.
the big the
Mhm.
big fear right now is it. Listen, there's also a rule that if someone's coming to kill you, like kill him first. We're not disregarding this world. We're
Yeah.
not disregarding anything that's happening in this world. If you have to defend something, if you are somewhere, that's that. We're talking about different plane, but the big fear now, and I feel so weird saying it because if somebody is, city is being bombed, it sounds like insensitive. That's not what I mean. But as far as conscious beings in whatever we're doing, the big fear is that we lose this opportunity. We miss the opportunity, the spiritual opportunity that we have right now to find, what is unity? What is love? Does that mean everyone just agrees with me? Is that really the highest level? I mean, we should think about it for 1 second. If anyone didn't think about it yet, think about utopia. Think about some situation where everything is in a state of perfection. Of course, we can't because it's beyond our perception, but imagine something. I mean, is it a place where everyone just agrees with me? Is that what it
that's why it's
is?
called utopia,
Is
because
that
no
when
one
you get
believes that
there,
it's
when
real.
everyone
But it's
just
not even real.
agrees with
Yeah.
you and is
Well, here's the contradiction in terms, right? Here is the paradox that lies within the premise itself. How can everyone agree with me while also maintaining their individuality and wanting everyone to agree with them? We all want everyone to agree with us, and we all want that. So how does that ever work, right? And to put it differently, we're saying humanity is one thing, it's a single system, it's interdependent, nothing exists in isolation, there's no single local separate isolated part, it's all one fabric, right? So if that's the case, that means we're all tied together. Like Barasulam gives an example in his Peace in the World, Peace in the World, where he says, think about a giant cogwheels machine, right? All of the cogwheels are ultimately influencing each other. So if one little cogwheel moves a little bit, just a tiny bit, immediately it ripples through the whole system. So no one can even move without moving the whole system. So how is then any concept of freedom a possibility? How is there any individuality in the system? How is there any kind of expression of how could it be? Because if I'm connected to all the other cogs, how can I move in some direction that I want to, let's say,
so
you know?
fascinating because the more
So,
you move closer to the truth of spirituality and you discover that you are connected to everyone and everyone is connected to
mhm.
you in one system, and not only you but to every cloud and star and
Oh,
planet,
yeah.
and there's stars that are really far away and also connected to them, and planets, and so you end up, there's zero freedom of movement because the
Zero.
whole system is all moving
and
There's no
together.
and
there's
and
no
this is
space.
something
Yeah.
that this is something, yeah, there's no latitude for anything to just happen,
So
emerge
funny. It's funny.
spontaneously. Think about like the whole like astronomical kind of structures that have this perfect geometry that causes like earth to spin in a certain way, and all of these planets in orbit, and the moon and the sun, and how that influences the tidal waves on earth, and that
Hmm.
enables or disables certain forms of life to emerge, and how that affects evolution, and how every to the point that every little particle, neuron that fires in your brain is a part of a gigantic, vast, interdependent system, and there's no free
That's
choice,
too complicated. There's no way I can
zero
grasp
free
that.
choice
I
in the
prefer that it
system.
doesn't exist and just act and continue to exist however
But that
I
is
makes
that
sense to me.
this is something physicists, most physicists agree with, that there is, in a
It's
physicist
fascinating
perspective,
because we all feel
there's
that
no
we are free during the day. Like, I'm
we
free to
all
pick up
feel
this
that we're free
bottle.
to.
I'm free to move the mouse.
So
Like, we
what
feel
is it?
everything we do is my
So
own
go back to
movement, of
agreeing with
course.
everybody. So how does that? So how do we do that?
So, so yeah, freedom lies at a deeper level. Freedom is not that I want to, if I'm a little cog in the system. So freedom cannot be that I choose to like forcefully try to, move a few cogs with me in a different direction, like going against the rest of the system. It's impossible. We think it's possible. The human mind, human consciousness, or the human ego, if we want to be kabbalistically accurate, is the only thing in reality that thinks that it's outside this law of interdependence. But it's because we don't have a deeper concept of freedom. What if freedom is on a completely different level, and the way to get there is actually, now that's going to sound contradictory for some of, from some of our viewers probably, but let's try to get past that together. What if freedom exists on the other side of interdependence? Meaning, when we embrace, all of us cogs in the system, what if when we actually embrace that interconnection between us, that complete system,
Lack
that
of
we,
freedom, you mean?
which is a
Embrace
lack of
lack of
freedom.
freedom?
It's a lack of freedom. I give you that. But what if freedom, but we don't even, what if freedom is something you don't even understand right now, because it appears to you only when you embrace
Yeah,
the,
today when I say
the
freedom, it
current
means like
interdependence.
I get to choose, which car I want, or which, if I want chicken
Yeah,
or
what
meat
is
for dinner.
freedom?
That's what we think freedom is. But right, it's something, the spiritual freedom means to be, you exist in an endless field of delight. It's totally different,
Let
different.
me try to explain it through the metaphor of the network, if we continue with the metaphor of the network. So if I'm a cog in the network, and I begin to embrace my interdependence with the rest of the system, with all of humanity, with all of reality, the galaxies, the planets, the stars, whatever, it's all in my consciousness. If I begin to embrace that, and we begin to devote ourselves to the interdependence, the law of interdependence that rules the system, is it possible that we can gain the mind, even though we're just cogs, but by embracing the interdependence of the system, we can gain the mind and purpose and intention of the whole network? That means that we become like the mind and the intention of the whole network. Now you're talking about a completely different level of consciousness, where we are completely
the
interdependent on one
size
level,
the size
but
of the difference between what I could imagine and even what the three of us could imagine. But to think, we talked about the expanse of the universe and time and planets and stars, to enter into the mind of that versus my own limited mind. It's, you can taste for a second what, the difference between spirituality and
It's then I
everything
couldn't
we
even
just.
consider what I want. Because if I'm considering what I want, then there's no way that I can connect or even maybe okay by sensing okay by knowing what I want, then I
let me
know
ask
that
you
this is
that.
what I want,
Who,
and then I know what they want. So then I have like this kind of choice. Like this is what I want. This
what
is what the system wants. That's where the choice
what
is.
if you what yeah what if you identify, you at the moment identify with some desires that you call your own, right? We think we have some desires, we call them our own, and if we fulfill them, we feel like we're free. If we can't fulfill them, we feel like we're being shackled. right? What if you begin to identify with the governing intention, the desire, so to speak, of the whole system?
So what does that look like? If that in that case, I'm not identify. Okay, so something else very very unique about the wisdom of Kabbalah is this difference between the my inanimate, vegetative, and animate life and my spiritual life. Because in my spiritual life, if I want to enter that, I can't be looking at half of the people as bad and wrong. I have to somehow
Mm-hmm.
everything fits in there.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
if some asteroid is smashing into a planet somewhere, right? Do I have to go around and label that as bad? And then, you know, some
Or
some
do I have to try to
some
stop it even?
yeah, yeah. Do I have to go around the whole universe like righting every wrong on every
Mm-hmm.
star and every rock, you know, every and balancing all of that, and then also here on Earth, everything that I find wrong in my eyes, or actually in spirituality, somehow everything is right. Everything
I
is
mean, I would say
correct.
it's wrong to invade a country and, bomb civilian residents.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, yeah.
Does nature
It's
want that?
super
Is that
complicated to
good for nature?
discuss.
There's
Why?
two levels here that I
Yeah,
mean,
that's no, that's
there's
not
two
good.
levels.
It's very
On
bad.
one level, maybe, I'll be brief about it and maybe
Well, you have
um
to connect to
yeah,
this network that you said is happening
yeah.
and this freedom of choice because these are two things you opened and you need to bring them together. Close it up.
The network is connected. It's interdependent. We're part of it. We're not free. We are not free. Sorry, people. Scientists will tell you, will agree with me here. Most of them. We're not free. We're in a system. That's not where freedom lies, though. Freedom lies in how we experience that interdependence. And that is where war does not have to be part of our experience. We can change and avert and reduce and completely take suffering off the table, idealistically speaking, if we embrace what the law of interdependence is trying to get us to. It's trying to get us to agreement, embracement, adoption, identifying with our inherent connectedness. There's a whole other level of life on the other side of that, but it takes
I would
rising
have.
above that
I don't think
initial
I've.
egoistic
I,
consciousness that we're in.
I don't think I would have even thought about that. I don't think there would have ever been a conversation of how do we. Let's say that there's a conversation about about preventing war, and about what we can do to change it. That would have never happened if it wasn't for war. So on one hand, it
Yeah.
kind of needs to express itself because otherwise no one cares about it. And on the other hand, we have to say, okay, no, we have to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. But on the but so if it doesn't happen anymore, then we're not learning. But if it happens, then we have an opportunity. You know what I'm saying?
But hold on. There's something that's super, super clear. We are right now where we are right now.
Yes.
That's what we can deal with.
That's the fact.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we can deal with. So right now we have an opportunity. Right now there's a terrible war going on. Right now there's
Yeah.
people on both sides. There's plenty of Russian people that are in a really bad situation. Also, Ukrainians
Right. Right.
obviously are in a
Everyone's suffering
terrible
in
situation,
different
and
ways.
people will
Absolutely.
suffer because of lack of food. People in Lebanon will suffer because of a lack of food. People in other countries in Europe will suffer because of a lack of food because of what's happening here. This is a problem for everyone, but we have an opportunity now to add to build that pipeline that so that with that called light of Chasadim we talked about at the beginning, so that that life force of life can come in, and even though we don't feel it all of the time, we don't, if I give money to Ukraine, I know I did something. If I also add these forces into the network, I'm also doing something. I'm not going to get an email receipt, but I'm
And
also doing something. And
and the forces we need to add to the system are only at the level of consciousness. The law of interdependence is gradually appearing in the system. It causes friction. It causes more cogwheels to feel their inherent resistance to the law of interdependence. This is what creates war. We don't want to be connected. We refuse to agree with our interdependence. We, being aware of this right now and every moment of life, have an opportunity to add that consciousness to the system, that we're all one, that we're all connected, and that there is a law higher, a higher order of nature that is appearing through us and taking us to a higher level. If we embrace it, we won't need to materialize the conflict between us. We can go through it consciously, like the plane. We can go quickly and fly quickly towards our destination, if we understand what it is. So, if from that perspective, because we're all networks of desires, and in that network, there's no time, there's no space. You influence everything in the network, everywhere in the network, doesn't matter where you are and when you are.
Hold
That's
on, pause,
why,
pause,
yeah.
pause. But we don't feel it right away because we're lifting off of this earth all of those sensations we feel about the war, all of the sensations we feel about everything that's happening is happening in our corporeal senses.
Mm-hmm.
The spiritual sense, what's called the soul, and the soul also is comes in those different degrees. The feeling um, of the spiritual sense is felt just the way when I eat, I taste with my mouth and my tongue. When we perceive spirituality, it's
Yeah.
with a common shared vessel. It's impossible to perceive spirituality as an individual. The literal definition of what it means to be one is to be one. So when we become together in that connected way, then we can actually perceive. If someone tells you they're perceiving, spirituality without having that inner integration, without building the thing called the soul, what is the soul? It's the vessel in which that light dwells. So that's
Feeling, yeah, developing that we need to make synonymous, developing the spiritual sense and developing your sense of connection to the rest of reality is one and the same.
and
That
as we're doing that, the what that is love, is life force, right? There's that great poem, like, did the sun and the moon are fighting. I don't remember what it's, like, a cute, really beautiful poem. Did the sun ever ask for for to say thank you when he's shown on this day and this day? I don't know. I'll find it.
oh
And and
yeah, there
and
is such a thing. It's such a
it's really
poem.
nice because to be a vessel, to build that soul, I have to be completely loving. I have to be completely towards the other when all of my
Mhm.
personal nature is that gravitational force pulling towards me. And so as I start to love the other, I start to lose taste in my bodily force flavors,
Mhm.
because he's saying, hey, what about me? What am I you want to do for the other until the
Yeah,
transformation
you
happens.
your quality of love or a measure of love defines your perception of reality. This is why the highest correction of our or calibration of our perception is called love thy friend as thyself. It's not some biblical, maxim that we think is like an ethical kind of thing. It's the formula for how to perceive the complete reality. When you feel that between you and everything outside of you, there is a connection called love that makes you one, that is the end goal of your development of your spiritual vessel. That is what it's all about. That's why it boils down to this very simple thing that is actually at the root of all the religions and all of the and many kinds of traditions and things, because it all ultimately originated from some sort of connection with that principle, because it's the principle of the complete perception of
Well,
reality.
if we're
Love
talking
your
about
friend as yourself.
opportunity,
Hmm.
If we're talking about opportunity, and we know that that's the system wants to bring us ultimately to some goal, and it's using war as a means to get there, then we don't if we don't act correctly during this instance of a war that's now showing itself, then
Mm,
we can imagine if we don't do it, then another war will appear, and there's also Balsam also writes that there will be more.
yes.
So, I mean, yeah, I could close this
Yeah.
podcast. I could continue on my day. I could, you know, act normal. Yeah, I heard some nice things. I agreed with some things, but what does it mean to realize the opportunity of this war? First of all,
There's
what
there's
emotionally is the
thousands
opportunity, and then what can
there
you? Mm,
there's thousands of people who are engaged in are focused on this all the time, all the time. And around them, there's all kinds of circles of other people with different levels of understanding and different emotional experiences of life in every part of the world. They're not on BBC, they're not on Al Jazeera, they're not um, on CNN or Jerusalem Times or whatever else. We're not going to see them there, but there is a network of people who some are in it all the time, some are just reading a little bit about it, but that are awakening. And we don't see or feel it so much because it's not, and we need more shows, more songs, more newsletters, more good emails. Everybody should be spreading this, should be thinking about it, thinking about our unity, thinking about our good connection. If the world is injected more and more and more with this, and if we're drawing, building this light of chasadim and drawing the upper light through this, the force of nature will arrange and organize everything in the way that it needs to be organized in a comfortable, good way. So we are doing it. Everyone is doing it. And everyone who's here and everyone who's listening should be thinking about this. When I'm standing there in line at the post office and I'm bored and I'm thinking, whatever, just start adding into the network of good.
or even
When I'm
just think about the network, like where am I, where, what is the network trying to awaken me to how to react. All those thoughts of me saying, oh, maybe there is a network, maybe there's not a network, that also comes from the network. These are all scrutinies, that a person goes through. It's just to somehow have some kind of like contact with that thing that you can't feel yet. And of course you're gonna disconnect from it because you have no sense of it. You don't even know if you're touching it or not. But these like attempts to push, to push and feel like where, kind of like you're trapped in a box and you want to get out of this thing that, says I need to act out like, Asaf said with the cogwheel. There's this program that says no, you need to turn, but there's another program that says no, you're already being turned. You just need to agree with whatever is turning you, and want to have some conscious participation in that. So there is something like that exists, and somehow that can prevent wars. I don't know where it is. I don't know how to touch it. I don't know how to get in contact with it. I don't know where it exists exactly, but just asking those questions and wanting to be somehow connected to that process is are the efforts. Those are the efforts. Asaf, your microphone's closed.
Oh, no, I was just listening to you. Um, there's another point that should be brought up, and that is that um, this process that we're going through, where people feel in dispute, where people feel friction, as we say, more than in this episode, as we said in previous in the last few weeks a couple of times, right? This is necessary. It's required. It is, what can you do? This is the engine of progress. This is the way in which consciousness emerges from friction. Any kind of thing that we know in reality comes from a comparison between two opposite forces. It comes from a clash. It comes from some sort of a collision. That's how our visual apparatus is built from, the light and lack thereof. And that over billions of years builds our ability to sense color and lights in different gradations and so on. That's how we make out make up everything in reality around us through heat and cold and ebb and flow and plus and minus and male and female. That's how nature works, through resistance, through conflict. That is something that is a part of nature. It's part of the engine of development. But the unique thing that we have as human beings is that we are the conscious element, the sentient component in the natural system that is capable of experiencing the conflict on a conscious level. And if we do that, that's our offer, I would say. That is the big offer that we are making here for everyone listening to this, right? If you see the rest, everything that's happening out there in the world as a conflict that you are going through, these are your parts that are in conflict. You know, we keep hearing from our teacher who spent more than 12 years with his teacher, that every day, you know, the Rabash, that he would listen to the news every day for 1 minute, not the politics of it, not like the interpretations, just to know what's happening as clean as it is possible. You know, and back then I guess news were even
Back
less,
then, it's probably a little bit
we're
different.
we're a little
Yeah.
we're a little less co-opted by other interests. But you know, he would listen, he would turn on the news, and he would insist on listening and seeing what's happening in the world for 1 minute, 2 minutes, done,
Right.
and keep going about what he was doing or studying. Even in the middle of a lesson, if there was a war going on or something like that, he would stop. Why is it? Just because for a Kabbalist, he identifies that as something happening in his vessel, and he's in touch with it through the inner world of our desires and intention, through that network of desires. That's so we now remember what we started from, how today in our time, everyone knows everything. Everyone knows there's a war. Everyone's emotionally involved. Everyone's consciously involved. If you're a player in some, you know, if you're a business or something, you have to express that you're involved. Everyone is being pushed to respond consciously to what is happening in
They
the
don't actually
human
want an
network.
external response. Yes, I support Ukraine or I support Russia. They want it
Nature,
wants an inner
this it's
response.
I think I find that as an interesting thing. It's kind of kabbalistically cool that people feel like they need to put on their profile, I support, you know, Ukraine, or I support. There's something cool about it because it expresses a deeper force in the system, and the deeper force is what nature really wants from us. What the law of interdependence wants from us is conscious participation. That's it. Nature wants our attention. Nature wants us to be emotionally and um, consciously involved in our own evolution. That is what nature wants from human beings. And the evolution happens through conflicts between us. But if we're emotionally involved in them, we can go through them in our emotions, in our thoughts. We don't have to get to the level of bombs and killing each other and murdering each other. We can save all of that crap by just being attentive to what nature is doing to us. It's bringing us together. It's bringing our shattered vessels, our shattered bits of consciousness to one. That's what needs to happen. And therefore, if there's any event in which people come together, just like now, you know, listening to this conversation and are with us in this effort to bring our bits of consciousness together around what's happening, that changes the world, because that influences the network of desires on the deepest level. We don't see it immediately because it doesn't hit our five senses directly, but the more we develop a sense of it from within, you will feel that the efforts you're doing are changing the world. They're changing your perception of the world,
Yeah,
and
it changes your
ultimately the
perception.
world.
Yeah, it makes you feel every time you
you
go
you,
back to it, you see it differently, but you
you see
seeing
nature
is like
everywhere.
feeling it.
I,
Right.
I'm telling you, I don't want to sound weird, but every day and you know, let's not go there. Forget it. We are out of time, and Seth is on mute, but otherwise he would stop me.
No, I was interested to see where you're going to go with that.
Let's
I
not
want to
go
hear the
there.
story.
Let's do something else. Why don't you? We were supposed to talk about goblins and AI
I
influencers,
saw
but that didn't
goblins and weird
that,
computer thing. That's on
that
the
didn't
thumbnails. I
happen.
saw. Explain yourself.
We thought we would talk about it, but hey, we have our plans, and nature has
Typical.
its own plans. So I guess
Right.
that's part of it. Um, so Seth, how about you pick up that guitar that's just lying there, uh,
It looks. It
and
looks
and do
in need of a
something with
hand.
it.
That
Yeah, it
guitar needs
looks
a
like it
hand.
looks like.
I need time. I need time to get back to this thing.
He's
Okay,
rusty.
everyone in the chat, give Seth some support here. I think.
Okay, send the support. I'll do my little piece. Let's send the support
Okay,
into the
send the
network, not to
support.
me.
Right.
Yeah,
Send it to
that
the
would be.
networks. Send it to the people in Ukraine. Send it to the people in Russia. Send it. Let's hug all of this network that we are all part of, and let's try to bring some peacefulness to it. Now, peace doesn't mean that we will erase all this turmoil that's happening. We want to channel it to greater connection. We want people to rise to a new level of consciousness where we see that we are one, and nature is pushing us to get together on a deeper level. And if we can understand that, we don't need war.
We're living in a time the people have awakened, living in a time the truth is standing naked, living in a time where everyone's connected. We're living in a place pieces all collected, living in a place where no one can escape it, living in a place where everyone's connected. Underneath the ground, I can hear the sound. The earth is shaking, shaking. Underneath my feet, I can hear the beat. The earth is changing, changing. And a voice is calling us beyond the wall. Living in a cage, the people are dependent, living in a cage where everyone's affected, living in a cage where everyone's connected. Underneath the ground, I can hear the sound. The earth is shaking, shaking. Underneath my feet, I can hear the beat. The earth is changing, changing. And a voice is calling us beyond the wall. And a voice is calling us beyond the wall. And a voice is calling us beyond the wall.
next Thursday, the usual time. Thank you, everybody. Hugs, much peace and love.